Welcome to episode 39 of The Pulpiteer. I'm your host, Eric Hepburn, and I'm glad to have you join us for today's episode. Today's podcast is entitled Things Fall Apart, or ROFL, which is an acronym for Rolling on Floor Laughing. There's a break in the middle of the episode where you're invited to watch a clip that we don't have permission to broadcast, just to give you a heads up. All right, let's get started. Good morning. I'm Eric Hepburn. My pronouns are he, him, and I am proud to be your pulpiteer. Tomorrow's a special day for a couple reasons. We'll get into it in the sermon part, but I'll give you a brief preview. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of my first time in this pulpit as your pulpiteer. So, over the course of the next few weeks, we'll be inviting some reflection on where we've been and where we're going. And also tomorrow is the International Day of Trans Visibility. So we'll be celebrating that as well during the service. I'm going to start out with 2 quotes this morning. For those of you keeping track, this is the Sunday where we're doing chapter 7 of our Congregational Read, What It Takes to Heal by Prentis Hemphill. That chapter is called Things Fall Apart. Also the name of one of my favorite Roots songs. I'm going to start with a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown's book, Emergent Strategy. The quote is actually the activist and author Grace Lee Boggs. And this is what she says. Building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. Let me read that again because I think, at least for me, I had to read it 9 times before it sinks in, but I won't make you listen to me say it 9 times, but we'll do it 2. Building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. Now we're going to draw a little Venn diagram in our minds this morning, and we're going to introduce a second quote, and then we're going to talk about the intersection. The second quote comes from this chapter in our Congregational Read, and the author of the quote is Malidoma Patrice Sommet. And she said, "Conflict is the nature of a relationship asking to deepen." Conflict is the nature of a relationship asking to deepen. So let's tie this back into tomorrow's our anniversary. I am glad to say that I can sense in the last month or so that we're moving out of our honeymoon phase. Let's talk about what that means and what it looks like a little bit. All the things that were sort of sidelined or swept under the rug in your joy at having someone full-time back in the pulpit, at your willingness to defer to me on all issues, those things are beginning to bubble up. That's what the end of a honeymoon looks like. I've been thinking of the quote from a show from my youth called MTV's The Real World. When people stop being polite and start to get real. Now, here's my observation about this. This might sound like a curse, but it is a blessing. And I want you to understand why through these 2 quotes that I brought up this morning. I want you to understand why it's a blessing. It's a blessing because the absence of conflict would indicate an absence of desire for our relationship to deepen. The absence of conflict would indicate a lack of desire for our relationship to deepen, for us to dive deeper into the healing work we are called to do together. That would be a bad sign. So, We need to be in a space safe enough to surface our differences and to work through them. That's what we need. It's what we need inside this room. It's what we need in our families. It's what we need in our politics. A space safe enough to actually say what it is that we need, what it is that we want from this life, what it is that we think our siblings and brothers and sisters and neighbors, our elders and our youth need. To stand up for them and to stand up for ourselves and say, this is what's necessary now. This is what, as human beings, each of us deserve. Here is my part in it, and I will stand and share my part. But the act of sharing what we need is always a vulnerability. We believe that by hiding our needs underneath our armor, we can keep them safe. Yes, you will. You will keep them safe from ever getting met. Wow, that joke landed a lot softer than I thought it would. I'm going to say it again. If you keep your needs under your armor, what you are saving them from is ever getting met. Yeah, more articulate, forceful. Okay. Note to self on comedy, make punchline punchier. Building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. So the individual side of it we just hinted at, a willingness to be earnest and honest and open about one's own needs. In each of our relationships, our one-to-one relationships, our one-to-many relationships. This is what I need. And it is an act of disarmoring to lay down your armor and say that out loud to someone. It puts your sense of safety at risk to that person's willingness to see you and hear you and honor what you're telling them. But those three things that I just listed are also the foundation of deeper relationship. They must be put at risk if we are to become more to each other than neighbors who only wave as we're pulling into our driveways. After we open the garage door and we wave, and we go inside the house and we close the garage door, and we don't see that person again until the next day when we repeat the street drive-by ritual. That's my neighbor Joe. We met one time on the sidewalk, but mostly we wave at each other every day from the car. I want to invite us to a deeper version of neighboring with one another. Maybe something reminiscent of the old thing about going next door to borrow eggs and flour. Why would we do that? H-E-B is just 3 blocks away. So much less awkward to just pay for what I need from the H-E-B. True. All true. I wonder often exactly what kind of culprit in our modern ecology convenience is. We sure do focus a lot of time and energy on seeking it and wanting it. I don't think it's the unalloyed good we think it is. All right, so I'm going to talk about 3 areas where I can see our relationship asking to deepen. One is, it is pledge season. Can I get an amen? Amen. It's pledge season, folks, so we are trying to put together a pledge campaign so that we can bring on a halftime DRE, so that we can keep growing this church in this community. If you have not pledged yet, and you are ready to do so, I would love for you to fill out a card before you leave today and put it in the box in the back. Now, if you fill out a card and you get a call from me or someone like me next week asking about your pledge because you we think you haven't put one in, but you did, please be kind to us. We're operating with the best data we have, but there are multiple actors, and this is not one of our best, fine, well-oiled, fine-tuned machines area of operation. It's not. So we may call you, even if you already put in your pledge, just say, oh, I did that already, and then we'll schedule lunch anyway. The second one that I want to bring up, an area where our relationship is asking to deepen, is around our kitchen and coffee hour and food. So at the end of this next month, on May 4th, may the 4th be with you. Anybody like that mixed metaphor? Yeah, right? Anybody's like Star Trek, Star Wars thing just go off in their head like the red siren? Okay, that was on purpose. I'm just doing a geek check of the crowd. So on May the 4th, we are going to have a community potluck. So if you like community potlucks, please mark your calendar to stay after church. So we're going to stay after church and we're going to eat together. And we're going to enjoy the sustenance of having food together, enjoy together. And then after that potluck, we're going to do a healing circle to talk about the challenges and the conflict that's coming up around how do we want to, as a community, do the welcoming of post-church coffee hour every week. How do we want to do that? What issues are we all bringing into the room from our own families around these issues? Because, folks, this is one of those things that we could try and come up with some kind of bureaucratic solution to this that would work okay. But that's not what we're here for. Look, if you want to join Kiwanis Club, go join Kiwanis Club. And you can find practical solutions to how we gather problems and do that. We are here for deep healing work. And when conflict arises, it's an opportunity to ask deeper questions and go deeper into the answers, because we don't just deserve systems that work. We deserve systems that work and that promote our healing and wellness. We deserve right relationships with one another as a community, as an outcome of working through these things when they come up. And that's what we're going to try and do together on May 4th. Another one that's coming up is we're doing the annual Poppy Parade at the end of April. And this has brought up some issues about how central or not central Unitarian Universalism is to our identity as a church and a community. So some of us like versions of the logo that just say UU, and some of us like versions of the logo that say Unitarian Universalist. And nobody's wrong and nobody's right, and we all have things to learn from each other, and we all have different ways of approaching this. But if that is something that you have strong feelings about, I'm going to call an audible. Pam's looking at me right now, so I know we're on the same page. Pam will have a piece of paper ready at the end. If the UU identity thing is something you want to be in conversation about, it's something you care about, I would like you to go sign up on the piece of paper that Pam's going to have at the end of the service, and we'll get a group together, and we'll sit down and talk about this as a community. Does that sound good? All right. Okay, we're transitioning away from this anniversary thing, because I said there was a second reason why today is special, International Transgender Day of Visibility. Now, I've got an idea here, and we're going to approach this in two discrete ways. One, if you love this and think it was the best thing ever, the credit goes to Sarah Smith. If you think it was a terrible idea and hope we never do it again, you can blame me. I don't know if you know this, that's actually written in some really good leadership books. Right? Leaders take responsibility when things go wrong, and they give credit when things go right. So, Sarah came up to me a couple months ago and she said, we need a humorous service. I'm only giving you half of one today. We're going to have a half humorous service.
Podcast listeners, at this point in the service, we watched together an interview on The Daily Show where Jordan Klepper interviews Alok Vadmenon. The interview is easy to find on YouTube, or you can Google Alok, A-L-O-K, Daily Show, and you'll find it. It's an 11-minute clip. We don't have permission from Comedy Central to stream the audio, so we'll pick up our podcast after the clip. If you're able, I encourage you to watch the clip before you listen to the rest. Thanks. Humorlessness kills justice movements. I think we've been talking about this for at least since October, definitely since November. I'm not trying to convince you that it's not scary out there. I'm not trying to convince you that there aren't real harms happening. We only have control over how we show up to those moments. And if we show up to those moments taking ourselves and what's happening so seriously that we lose touch with our joy, we will also lose touch with our ability to truly experience the grief that is required by these moments of harm. And that is not healing. That's just more repression of the kind that we need to heal together. Some of you have heard me say this before. I'll know that we're really on the right road as a congregation when we can laugh and cry together. Both. Preferably close together. The ability to transnavigate the circle of human experience together, without fear of judgment, without echoes of shame from the people in our past who told us that we didn't really have permission to be fully feeling and expressing human beings, that there was something wrong with that. They can't take our joy. And what makes a great funeral is that moment when someone cracks a joke. I love serendipity. I'll tell you a little story. So I preach kintsugi when I do memorial services. So the art that was in our story from this morning, the art of gold lacquering broken things, is called kintsugi. You see, the broken thing isn't what it was before. And trying to make it look like it looked before is a fool's errand. We have to learn to celebrate the cracks in our own broken hearts, because that's what wisdom looks like. It's not pretending you don't have scar tissue. It's not getting plastic surgery so no one else can see the scars. It's getting a tattoo on top of the scar that says, "Hell yeah." A tattoo on top of the scar. No, it's right here. This is where life broke me. And I can laugh and I can cry because it's mine. When I saw this video, I knew I had to share it with you all, just so that you could see at least one other crazy person besides me say that we're winning the long game. The terms of the debate are unimaginable 40 or 50 years ago. Once again, I'm not minimizing the risk, the harm, any of it, but I am saying this. This is sandbags trying to hold back the tide. The arc of the moral universe bends toward justice. It's not just one of King's favorite quotes. I've spent a lot of time meditating on it, really asking, yeah, but is it true? Does it describe some deeper thing about reality that we need to see? And I believe that it does. I believe that the moral arc of the universe does bend toward justice. And whether you call it the God, the universe, the number 42, whatever you call it, it is beckoning you to play your part in that journey. On the individual level, by developing spiritual practices so that when hard moments arise, you will have the deep well of yourself to draw on to show up to that moment. And imagine a new, kinder, gentler, better, more just future. In community, when these moments happen, if we've done the work and we've built the community, and let those honest, earnest relationships between us become the spiritual practice that make us able to respond to a hard moment in a new and healing way. Amen. We are winning in the long term for as long as we hold love in the center. Amen.
Until next time, thank you for joining us on The Pulpiteer. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can help others find it by liking and subscribing. If you're so moved, you can even leave us a review. All reviews will be gratefully received. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can make a donation at sangabrieluu.org/give. The Pulpiteer Podcast is a production of the San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Georgetown, Texas. The podcast is hosted by Spotify, and theme music is by John Faber. Our live recording tech crew is Frank Sanders, Rob Berthold, Keith Hutchinson, and Andrea McDaniel. The podcast is produced and performed by Eric Hepburn. See you next time.